Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers before we start our class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurбhavасваha Tatsavitra Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodaya. Asto ma sadgamya tamso ma jyotirgamya mrityurma amritam gamya. Om sahna vavtu sahna bhunaktu saviryam karvavai tejasvi navadhitamastu ma vidvishavahi. Om shanti shanti shanti. Mandukya Upanishad, and it's a tradition to sing this Shanti mantra also before we start this Upanishad studies. Om Bhadram Karnabhi Shrunuyam Deva Bhadram Pashyem Akshibhi Yajatraha Sthirayange Tutushtvansa Tanubhi Vayashem Devhitam Yadayu Swasti Nah Indraha Vridishravaha Swasti Na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti Na Takshare Arishnebi Swasti Na Brispati Dadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The translation, literal translation of this Shanti mantra is, O God, may we hear with our ears always what is auspicious. O worshipful ones, may we with our eyes see what is auspicious. May we live the entire length of our allotted life, hale and hearty, offering our praises unto you. May Indra, the ancient and the famous Pushna, the sun, the all-knowing, the Lord of swift motion, Vayu, who saves us from all harms, and Brispati, who protects the spiritual wealth in us, bless us with the intellectual strength to understand the scriptures and heroic heart to follow the teachings. Peace, peace, peace. So it's not just the study, but after that, we got to understand, and after understanding, we have to live the truth also. And we need this kind of a stamina to do that. It's a very short scripture, as we know, only 12 verses. And we have done first 10 of them. Or we, yeah, did we do, no, I think 7 we did. Yeah, it has been some time we looked at this. So today we are going to look at the verse number 8. Okay. And if you remember, in the verse number 7, there was a lot of detail about what Atma is, by negation also, by assertion also. So in that verse, in the verse number 7, this Rishi is saying, it's not that which is conscious of the internal subjective world, not that which is conscious of the external world, nor that which is conscious of both, nor that which is a mass of consciousness, nor that which is simple consciousness, nor is it unconscious. It is unseen by any sense organ, not related to anything, incomprehensible by the mind, uninferable, unthinkable, undescribable, essentially of the self alone, a negation of all phenomena, the peaceful, all bliss, and the non-dual. This is what is known as the fourth Turiya. This is the Atma. And then at the end he says, Sa Vigyeya. This is to be realized. Okay, beautiful verse, and we just went into the details of it. Now, in the verse number 8, this Rishi is taking our mind towards the same reality, with the sound Om. So, Ayam Atmaha Adhi Aksharam Onkaro Adhimatram Padaha Matraha Matraha Matrasha Akar Ukaroho Makar iti. The same Atma is again Om from the point of view of the syllables. The Om with the parts is viewed from the standpoint of its sounds or letters. The quarters are the letters, and the letters are the quarters. The letters are Akar, Ukar, and Makar. So A, U, M. Okay. When we try to write it down, especially in English, we just write A-U-M. But actually, it's the sound which gets created when we say A, U, and then when we close our mouth. So this Upanishadic mantra, which is given where we have a discussion of the eternal sound, Om, that's what we see in this verse. So this discussion of the Om clarifies its significance regarding its three syllables. So he is taking our mind so that we can understand the meaning of Om with regard to its matras or the letters. So three matras, he says they are three paths. See, Adimatram Padaha Matraha Matrashva Padaha Akar Ukar Makar iti. So he says, you got to understand, break it down, this Om sound into these three matras. Then in the next verse he says, Jagrit Sthanoho Vaishvanaroho Akaraha Pratmaha Matraha Apter Adi Tvadvaha Apnoti Vehe Sarvan Kaman Vishwa Bhavati Ya Evam Ved. He says, he who is Vaishvanar. This word we saw in the previous verses also, Vaishvanar. Having for his sphere of activity, the waking state is So the first matra, is the waking state. The first letter of Om, on account of its all-pervasiveness or on account of being the first. These two are the common features in both. In both means in the sound also and in the waking state also. One who knows this attains the fulfillment of all his desires and becomes the first or the foremost among all. We have already found that when the reality identifying with the physical structure looks out into the world of these sense objects, it acquires for itself the experiences of the waking state ego. And that waking state ego is called Vaishvanar. This waking state ego is superimposed upon the sound for the purposes of meditation. This is a method of superimposing So this method of superimposing, that means superimposing upon the object. That is a very secret technique, which is called idol worship also. So what are we superimposing when we have a form of our chosen deity? We are superimposing. Somebody who's worshipping the Shivling, a round piece of stone, that person is superimposing the idea of Lord Shiva. And the devotee, in his faithful adoration, reaches that particular stone, feels divinely inspired. He really feels the presence of God in that stone. But who is superimposing? The devotee is. For somebody else, it is just a stone. But for devotee, he says, no, this is Lord Shiva himself, Kailashpati. The same way upon the instrument of the torture, actually, if you look at it, the cross, Jesus Christ was tortured on that, nailed down on that. But how do the Christians see that cross? They see the divine aura of Christ on that cross. So they are superimposing. Wherever they see a cross, small or big, that is an occasion to feel divinely inspired and blessed by the Lord. When we are on this royal path of Vedas and we meditate upon the formless reality, the Atma, in the early days of our preparation, we need this some kind of a concept to pin on our attention to learn to meditate. We need something to focus upon. So that's why these sacred idols have been provided for us. And in this scripture, this Rishi is saying, when you are meditating on Om being a sound, you're not looking at the form, not the written down Om, just the sound of Om. Definitely it's difficult to meditate upon the sound in the early days. So instead of the parts of the object, we are provided with the sound limbs of the syllable Om in these verses. And we see the various aspects of our human personality are superimposed on this sound. So significance of our own psychophysical aspects by superimposing upon Om is described here. So the technique is elaborated in this and the following two mantras. So when we compare two things, there must be some common features of comparison between the subject of comparison and the standard of comparison also. If the thing compared to and the thing to which is compared have nothing in common, the comparison cannot stand. Just like we cannot compare apple to an orange, and we often use that idiom too. We do not say that milk is like honey, but we do compare moonlight with milk because they both look white. The same way here also, if the intentions of this Rishi is to compare the waking state ego with a sound, he is giving us some common feature of comparison between the two. And the waking state. This mantra explains the common feature in detail actually. According to the Rishi, the letter A in Om and the waking state ego have a point of comparison in common. And what is that? All pervasiveness. How? On account of being the first. A sound, or even when you look at the A, if you want to look at English, in the alphabet, that comes first. And the very first thing we see is this waking state. So the sound is the very fundamental of sounds. We have to just open our equipment of speech, which we call mouth, and blow out some air. And this initial sound is produced like, anybody can do that. The first letter seems to be in almost all the languages of the world. When a child is just born, the very first sound by which it declares itself to the world is by crying. And there is a sound in that crying. So very first of all the sounds, the waking state ego, we know is the very first in the series of experiences. Later on comes a dream. We know that a dream is just a projection of the impressions received by the dreamer during his waking state. That's why it often said that you will dream about whatever you have experienced when you were awake. All pervasiveness can also be a point of comparison since all sounds are pervaded by A. So Vaishvanar pervades the entire universe. This is very clear from this verse also, and from our experience also. The effulgent heaven is the head of this, the Vaishvanar, Atma, etc. The knower of this identity is glorified here in the Upanishad. That's why the scriptures declares that one who knows this, one who has identifies one's waking state ego with that sound of the Om, attains the fulfillment of all desires and becomes the first citizen of the world. Very prominent, well respected, adored, revered in their own generation. So this is like to encourage the students to actively practice the recommended spiritual techniques. This is kind of a common trick to encourage the students. They are talking about the sadhana. Because without sadhana, without practice, you really cannot experience. So when this Rishi is saying that that person will be respected, adored, and revered, so he says, do the sadhana. Meditate on this sound. So he's encouraging the students to actively cooperate and live the spiritual life. We got to learn how to train our mind. We got to get over our own psychological weaknesses and our mental preoccupations from the tensions and the suppressions. Only then we will feel this great energy efficiency, intelligence, daring. And that's why this Rishi is saying he naturally becomes one noted for sure success in all walks of life. So sit down, meditate on the first letter at least. Then he says the second letter. Swaprasthan tejas ukaro dvityaha matro utkarshaha ubhayatvad karshati havegyan santatim samanascha bhavati na asyaha brahm vitkule bhavati ya evam ved. He who is a tejas, having for his spheres of activity in the dream state, is U. So in English, we just write it U, because when we write Om, we say A-U-M, but actually it's U, A and O. The second letter of Om, on account of superiority or on account of being in between the two. He who knows this attains to a superior knowledge and is treated equally by all, and finds no one in his line of descendants who is not a knower of Brahma. So Rishi is continuing the technique of idol worship, and he is giving us a detail how we superimpose deliberately upon the second syllable. The ego risen up as a result of our identification. See, ego is what? Identifying ourselves with something, that's it, ego. And now it has risen up to the subtle body, called the dreamer. That I am a dreamer. First, I am a waker, that I'm a dreamer. And this dreamer revels in an inner world of subtle objects, experiencing its dreams. So is to be superimposed upon the second letter of Om, the U or O. The points of comparison and the common features between the dreamer in Om are provided by Rishi, so that the disciple may conveniently meditate upon the Om sound. And one of the common features which he is pointing out here, he says the superiority. The U comes after the letter A. Okay, even in English, it comes after A. So the superiority. So Tejas is considered superior to the waker because the waking state experiences, they happen before the dream. The Vishwa, after eking out its experiences in the world of objects, it deposits its experience, impressions and experiences of the outer world in the mind, in the mental zone. And it is those impressions which rise up like a ghost. And they really produce the delusory world of dream for the dreamer. So this is what this superiority means. That letter U comes after the letter A. And the second point of comparison is in this, that they both occupy a position in between the two. The U is between the A and Ma. So the dream state comes in between the waking and the deep sleep. See, first we have the Jagrata Avastha, then we have a Sopana Avastha, which is in between, then we have a Sushupti, deep sleep. So he who is meditating upon the U sound in Om chanting and maintaining an identification between the U and the subtle body develops his mind and intellect to such an extraordinary perfection. That means that even in our sleep, if we can remember all this, we don't forget who we are. We remember there too. He says he certainly should attain a superior knowledge. He should prove himself in the world a great genius. So remembering who we are, remembering the essence in our wakeful state, Jagrata Avastha, and then remembering that in our Swapana Avastha also. But if we cannot remember in the Jagrata Avastha, we cannot remember in the Swapana Avastha. Because what happens in the world of competition, money grabbing occupations, we forget that. Our attention becomes only into the physical part of this life. The essence we often forget. So this Rishi is reminding his students that if you are meditating on Om, this is how you are supposed to remember that this God is present in the waking state, is present in the dream state also. But this can happen only if we can, if our life is mainly based upon the spiritual values. If you are walking on a path of dharma, that's why even those 4 goals of life, the very first goal, the Rishi said dharma. And what is a dharma? Not hurting anybody, not stealing or putting somebody else down, not being jealous, not being greedy. That is a dharma. So he is promising us householders that if you are doing regular meditation upon the Om mantra, you would keep your lineage pure also. Your future generation, your children, grandchildren, they'll stay on this path too. This is the great encouragement he is giving it to us. That when you are on this path, it's not only helping you, it's helping others also. See the last line he said, he who knows this attains to a superior knowledge and is treated equally by all and finds no one in his line of descendants who is not a knower of Brahma. Na asya Brahma vitkule bhavati ya evam ved. Even today we find we want our children, even professionally, we want to follow the same path. Often a physician wants his or her children to be physicians. A lawyer wants his or her children to follow the same path. The same way over here, it's called a psychological heredity, which is noticed in human beings. So this Upanishad is saying that in the family of such learned and scholars of the scriptures, there will not be any member who is culturally low and spiritually base. This is a promise he is making. again to encourage us. Stay on this path, because our children and grandchildren, they try to walk on our footsteps. Let's look at one more. Sushupta sthanaha pragyoho makar trityah matraha miter pitevam vinotihi hava idam sarvam pitischa bhavati ya evam ved. This is verse number 11. Pragya, whose sphere of activity is the deep sleep state, is Ma. Or in English, you can say M. The third letter of Om. Because it's both the measure and also that wherein all become one. One who knows this identity of Pragya and Ma is able to realize the real nature of the things and the people of the world, and also comprehend all within oneself. So the identification of the Ma sound in Om and the sleeper must be quite evident for all of us. So this Upanishad is giving us two common features that exist between the letter M and the sleeper. The word Miti in Sanskrit means measure. A measure like when we measure some water, given quantity of fluid, and the measuring is done generally by filling up at to certain level in a glass from the unmeasured quantity and emptying into the measured cup. So in this process of measuring, from the standpoint of the measuring glass, the fluid comes to fill it and contents of the glass is again emptied out. So you measure it in something and then you take it out. You know that it was there for that quantity. The same way the sound Ma in Om and the deep sleep state of consciousness in life can both be compared to the measuring glass. So the idea is this: in pronouncing the sound Om, the letters A and U merge themselves into the last sound Ma. And again, when we chant the sound Om, the sound A and sound U seem to rise up. So in the deep sleep state of consciousness, both the waking state and the dream state experiences, they seem to fold themselves. It's almost like into a mass of homogeneous awareness. There's no up and down. There's no churning. There's a stillness. And when we wake up out of this undifferentiated mass of consciousness, the sleep state or the waking state, those dream state and waking state, it looks like they have come up from that. So it is in this respect that we have here both Ma and the deep sleep state compared to a measuring glass. And the other common feature between the last syllable in Om and the deep and the sleep state is the fact that in both the earlier polarity and the differences merge themselves to become one whole. That's why I'm saying it's homogeneous. And a person who realizes this identity is able to measure all meanings, to discriminate between things, to understand and judge the happenings both inside and outside. He's able to perceive and comprehend everything within himself. Whatever be the theme of knowledge, no matter how hard a subject is, how complicated it is, no knowledge to him is incomprehensible. No situation to him is beyond his grasp or understanding. So this is what he's telling us. This is what is hidden in the sound Om. So it's not just a simple mantra. That's why Rishi Patanjali talked about Om. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talked about Om. All our Vedic mantras, they start with Om. But often we just say this Om sound mechanically. We got to understand, what are we really doing? What does it really mean with those three sounds? Can we connect with that higher power? When we say this Om, or are we just trying to make our Om sound longer? We got to know the significance of Om. And then bring all this, all these values in our daily life also. When we say that everything has come from God in this waking state, that means everybody. See God in everybody. When I say the homogeneous, that means there's no place where God is not. Can we really take our attention to that? First, we do this during our meditations. Then it becomes our habit. Anything we want to do, we got to do it consciously first. Then it becomes our nature. And this is what the great Rishi is telling us to do. We'll finish up this scripture next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.